This is a bit of a controversial take. Suddenly, everyone has become an AI expert overnight.
That dependency is more critical now than ever before. AI depends on the data. That's customs is concerned with. That's good news for AI systems because, as I mentioned,
in just that 3-year time span, they went from clearing 350 million shipments to over 1 billion shipments a year.
Especially for a startup that wants to look at the landscape of AI technologies.
Technology can be costly.
They can get pretty good with these things now when they have the ability to scan actual.
Are we going to go away and there's going to be androids everywhere?
What do we do when there's bad actors that are using AI to thwart either more traditional?
So good afternoon. My name is Greg Pilkington. I'm excited to welcome you to our webinar, The Future of Customs, AI-Driven Innovations and Strategic Roadmaps. This is the final session of the Global Customs and Trade Forum's 4-part series on the use of AI and advanced technologies in customs. As the facilitator for today's session, I'll be guiding you through an insightful discussion on how advanced technologies like AI, machine learning, and blockchain are revolutionizing customs operations under the Customs 4.0 concept. Our goal is to explore these innovations and their potential to enhance efficiency, transparency, and security in customs processes. We have a stellar lineup of distinguished speakers who will share their expertise and insights on these transformative technologies, and I encourage you to engage actively, ask questions using the Q&A functionality that you see at the bottom of your screen, and take the most of this opportunity to learn from these industry leaders. So without further ado, let's dive into our session, and thank you for joining us. Let's get started. Our first speaker is Craig Atkinson. He is a globally recognized leader in trade tech, leveraging nearly 2 decades of experience across national governments, international organizations, academia, and the private sector to drive innovation in global trade and customs. As a digital trade, technology, and sustainable development expert, Craig's work spans regions including Canada, Switzerland, Singapore, and beyond, where he has implemented transformative solutions for modern trade challenges. Craig's expertise includes computational law for digital trade, distributed ledger technology for supply chains, and sustainable value chain development, supported by his Master of International Trade and professional certifications. His pioneering contributions have supported micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises, MSMEs, while generating significant value for clients worldwide. Join us as Craig opens up the final session of the Customs 4.0 series with his insights on the future of AI in customs and trade. And with that, Craig, the floor is yours.
Thank you for the introduction, Greg, and to the esteemed panelists here today, as well as for your leadership through the Global Customs and Trade Forum. I think it's important that we have a different channel to speak on some of these topics, as it's typically dominated by, a few different organizations. So we're getting a different perspective today. You and I, as well as others, have been speaking for some time now about digital transformation at really an organizational level, and particularly the interface between global logistics operators and customs authorities. And it's really an exciting moment for some of us that a few years ago couldn't get anyone to listen to topics like AI before the pandemic. Back then, I guess AI in customs was just seen as a bit beyond the comprehension of most people, or unrealistic. And in contrast, today, AI development is being highly supported by governments and businesses alike. So with that being said, I'm honored to give these opening remarks for today's webinar on the future of customs, AI-driven innovations, and strategic roadmaps. So when I was thinking about my initial remarks today, I wanted to mention up front that there's a bit of information overload on AI generally. Lately, it would seem that the market is saturated with solutions and terminology, and it's possibly getting harder to see where things are going. And I know it's becoming a bit of a cliche, but I think we can connect much of this enthusiasm to the development of large language models, or LLMs, and chat applications that started to become mainstream with the launch of OpenAI's ChatGPT in November 2022. 2 years later, this reminds me of sort of a World Wide Web moment. As some of us remember, back in the 90s, there was a transformative effect that web browsers had on communication, and this feels a little bit similar to that. More recently, I never imagined that we'd end up where we are now, and trade facilitation is no stranger to this AI revolution. And rightfully so. I believe there's many compelling artificial intelligence related use cases for goods trade modernization. So with that being said, I have a few overarching points for the audience to consider throughout this webinar. The first is that AI is not a monolith. I think it's very common that we talk about AI as just this one transformative technology, and we can talk for hours on the variety of types of AI and techniques, and some of those I'll mention later. But it's really important to realize that the impact of AI-driven innovations will not be uniform, and AI is really a set of different technologies. Secondly, and suddenly, this is a bit of a controversial take for this second point. We can now see in various fora like LinkedIn, everyone has become an AI expert overnight. But I think that's normal, even more so than what we saw with distributed ledger and blockchain technology during the last hype cycle. AI is very relatable to us as humans. This is especially true of LLMs and generative AI that act as horizontal or underlying layers and enabling technologies that help us communicate through written and other mediums. I believe we connect with recent AI innovations because they interface with what we are intimately familiar with, natural languages, as opposed to more inaccessible technologies. And 6 to 7 years ago, I was having weekly calls to discuss trade-related use cases for AI, especially rules automation for the purpose of trade compliance. At that time, some people in customs were talking about AI, but it seemed to be a more narrow and simplified discussion around areas such as natural language translation, customs classification, optical character recognition of paper documents, etc. Now it would seem that everyone in the trade community has become an AI expert. Thirdly and lastly, I believe that achieving AI requires planning. AI has the potential to enable digitalization, or the process improvements that result from digitization and the conversion of previously analog data sources, often contextual, into a digital form. However, this impact won't happen on its own, and it's critical to address the stage of digitization before AI can truly become a strategic tool for customs agencies and other government departments as well. So with that being said, I think for today's webinar, it was important to take stock of the practicalities of AI for customs, and I look forward to engaging in the discussion. So that's what I have for my opening remarks, and back to you, Greg. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Greg. Your vision of the future of customs and the role of advanced technologies, especially the practical aspects, are what we're looking for. You mentioned the hype cycle. There's a lot of hype out there about what AI might be able to do in the future. And I think a lot of us are just trying to figure out where do we go from here. I think having these kinds of conversations help us understand better how we can prepare as we move forward with these advanced technologies. So thank you again. It's now my pleasure to introduce my longtime friend and former colleague, Mr. Satya Prasad Sahu, affectionately known as SP. SP is a senior trade facilitation specialist in the World Bank's Global Unit for Trade, Connectivity, and Regional Integration. With a career spanning customs, trade facilitation, and regulatory modernization, SP has made significant contributions to streamlining global trade processes. Prior to his current role, SP served at the headquarters of the Central Board of Indirect Taxes and Customs in India's Ministry of Finance, where he spearheaded initiatives on single window, border controls, and customs enforcement. From 2008 to 2014, he was a senior technical officer at the World Customs Organization, where we were colleagues, managing global instruments such as the WCO Data Model, the revised Kyoto Convention IT guidelines, and safe framework of standards. SP is a recognized expert in global data standards, regulatory documentation, and single window environments. SP has also played a pivotal role in customs automation projects in India. His vast experience across national and international organizations has positioned him as a key advocate for innovation in trade and logistics. So join us now as SP shares his expertise and vision for the future of trade facilitation in the Customs 4.0 series. And with that, SP, I give it to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Greg, for the introduction. It's a pleasure to be a part of this webinar that is discussing a subject that is on our face everywhere, every day. As the previous speaker mentioned, AI is big, and AI is going to be big in customs as it is going to be in every other sphere of life. Let's figure out what is the hype and what is the reality. So we all know that customs deals with data, and it is dependent on data. It gets data from the private sector, and it has been that way ever since automated systems got introduced to customs, and even before that, data used to come in paper forms. The feedstock for AI is data, and that dependency is more critical now than ever before. Previously, data used to be handled in customs in very different ways. First is management information systems, and then decision support systems, and then what was fondly called business intelligence and data analytics. Customs was familiar with building data warehouses and data mining tools. And before AI came into being in such a big way, customs considered data mining algorithms as the ones that they would use for developing intelligence out of data. Now all that is past. Now AI is a commodity. But we should not forget that AI depends on data. And data that customs uses originates in the data that is handled by the private sector. So there are different kinds of data that the private sector generates. Firstly, data comes from the trade transaction. Without a trade transaction, you don't have a trade, you don't have international trade, and there is nothing that customs has to deal with. And then comes the transport transaction. The transport transaction and the trade transaction together provide the context for the data. But more important than these two contexts is the compliance information. The information about how compliant the product is, because that's what customs is concerned with. So previously, this data would just be made up by the brokers and the freight forwarders and the intermediaries who actually generate this data and provide it to customs. Increasingly, what is happening is that data is now getting generated from the source systems and transformed into what customs needs through various solutions that are back in the pipeline of trade data. So what we are witnessing now is the increasing possibility of data right from the source coming to customs. That's good news for AI systems because, as I mentioned, AI depends on the data. Next, once customs has the data, what does it do with it? It has two main functions: compliance and trade facilitation. These are the two primary objectives, and AI can streamline processes by automating routine tasks and improve efficiency without compromising security. And the second is the more evolving landscape that governments need to focus on, that is supply chain security and resilience. These additional objectives require a more complex objective function for the AI systems that customs works with, which must balance efficiency with the need for enhanced security against threats such as smuggling and terrorism. The point I mentioned initially was that customs deals with diverse amounts of data and that diverse types of data. And then the supply chain data, which it uses, needs to be available just in time. So customs would require advanced data to make the decisions it seeks to make using AI. There's no point in data coming much later when you've lost all the efficiencies that you could gain or all the insights and intelligence that you could gain. So the data pipeline also needs to be in the focus. Data available to customs in advance is what would actually power the AI. AI technologies like predictive analytics and machine learning can analyze diverse data sets to improve risk assessment and operational decisions. So we need to have a holistic approach on data. And as we get into this discussion, I'd like to get in a little more on what are the specific use cases that are actually currently popular on AI. To conclude my opening remarks, I would say that the integration of AI into customs operations represents a significant enhancement in how customs agencies can leverage data for trade facilitation, for compliance, for security and resilience. By embracing diverse data sources and focusing on the efficiency and resilience, customs can better navigate the complexities of modern trade environments. I stop here and pass it on to Greg. Thank you.
Thank you, SP, for that insightful presentation on the role of global data standards in the single window environments in enabling seamless trade. Your expertise and innovative contributions are truly inspiring and provide a valuable perspective on the future of trade facilitation. I want to we've had some folks join us since we started. Encourage you, if you have any questions, you see the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen there. Please feel free to ask your questions. You can also chat with us. More than happy to try and respond to as many of those questions and comments that we can. Now I'd like to move on to our final speaker. I'm pleased to introduce Mr. André Williams. He's the Chief Information Officer of the Jamaican Customs Agency and a seasoned public servant with nearly 27 years of experience driving innovation and modernization with Jamaica's customs and trade ecosystem. André has been at the forefront of digital transformation in customs, emphasizing sustainable growth and global collaboration. His leadership has been instrumental in advancing ICT solutions and implementing tailored digital tools designed to streamline customs processes, reduce delays, and promote sustainability in a cross-border trade environment. In addition to André's CIO role, he also serves as the National Project Manager for the Jamaica Single Window for Trade, J-SWIFT program, a transformative initiative enhancing trade facilitation in Jamaica. He's recognized for his commitment to collaboration and innovation, and André's work reflects the importance of interoperable systems, data-driven solutions, and public-private partnerships in shaping the future of customs. André will be discussing the transformative impact of tailored digital solutions on modernizing customs processes and fostering sustainability in global trade. André was recently a speaker at the WCO's Technology and Innovation Conference in Brazil, and happy that André is able to join us now as he shares his expertise and vision for creating a sustainable, connected global trade environment in the Customs 4.0 series. And with that, André, the floor is yours.
Good morning to you, Greg. Should I say good day? And to my fellow panelists, we're happy to be here. I agree with the sentiments, the opening remarks from my two fellow panelists, and I'd like to pick up from where SP has left off in regards to the need for digitization within customs. In a paper-based ecosystem, there is limited to little data, does not allow for us to capitalize on the benefits that technology brings. For us in the JCA, we have been focusing on the digitization of our services. That is where the data originates, by providing services to ensure that persons can submit electronic declarations to the agency for processing. And that not just only includes submission, but in terms of our internal workflows, which gives us what we need, which is data. Now, having digitized our services, as has been mentioned, it does present us now with the opportunities, despite the increasing growth in trade volumes. That's one thing that is constant. We spoke about that this morning in terms of the exponential growth of trade volumes. We are now in a global space and goods are coming from all around the world, which also presents more challenges in regards to the security of our environments. And to you, Greg, should I say good day? And to my fellow panelists, we're happy to be here. I agree with the sentiments, the opening remarks from my two fellow panelists, and I'd like to pick up from where SP has left off in regards to the need for digitization within customs. In a paper-based ecosystem, there is limited to little data, which does not allow for us to capitalize on the benefits that technology brings. And for us in the JCA, we have been focusing on the digitization of our services. That is where the data originates, by providing services to ensure that persons can submit electronic declarations to the agency for processing. And that not just only includes submission, but in terms of our internal workflows, which gives us what we need, which is data. Now, having digitized our services, as SB mentioned, it does present us now with the opportunities, despite the increasing growth in trade volumes. That's one thing that is constant. We spoke about that this morning in terms of the exponential growth of trade volumes. We are now in a global space, and goods are coming from all around the world, which also presents more challenges in regards to the security of our environments and ensuring that the goods that are being traded are safe. And so in ensuring that we can handle these growing trade volumes, one of the things that we are certainly sure of is that we can't keep throwing more people, more human resources at growing trade volumes. We definitely have to see technology or automation as a means of reducing costs and driving efficiency. And of course, ensuring that we are operating in a safe and secure way. What is demanded of customs, of course, is speed. There's also a request for greater transparency, visibility into the operations while your transactions or goods are crossing the border. And for us customs, we want to ensure the accuracy of the information that is coming in. So, of course, it brings into scope the challenges with data quality and compliance with regulatory requirements. Customs really sits the hub of trade. It's the same for many, if not all, customs authorities around the world, that we carry out not just our own functions in terms of balancing trade facilitation and border security, but also carrying out regulatory functions. Now, AI is indeed a game changer. There are many use cases we will be discussing this morning. And in regards to the area of risk management, that is where it presents one of the greatest opportunities. There is a tremendous amount of information. The use of AI in risk management is one of those that can help us to have more insights into the data, assessing viral patterns, measuring compliance at a much faster rate. And as we said, time is one of the greatest factors. Sometimes when we require advanced data to allow for us to assess level of compliance, but we also want to ensure that we are acting in a very time and efficient manner. Automation of repetitive tasks, that's a huge opportunity for customs. There is a cost in doing things manually. We have to process paper, which requires people. We have to store it, we have to retrieve it. And that doesn't go well for modern customs practices. But now, in looking at the opportunities from an AI perspective, measuring compliance, looking at fraud detection, undervaluation as well, that's also another major opportunity. And also in exchanging data, not just within country and among customs and other regulatory authorities, but other agencies, law enforcement agencies from a border security perspective, and also in regards to driving trade, the seamless exchange of information with other customs authorities, whether it is on import or export. So these are all opportunities of blockchain technology as well. We have seen where that has been successfully implemented by authorities within trading blocks to exchange information in regards to the value of trade, and that has proven beneficial for having shorter turnaround times for clearance in the recipient or importing customs authority as well. So all in all, we are on the verge of a new era, and it's now the correct application of the technology that we now need to look into. There are many use cases. I think Greg has mentioned some. We now need to look at the applicability of AI within our respective organizations as we carry out our roads.
Thanks, André. In our preparation, we talked a little bit about how e-commerce has really caused this explosion in the volume of shipments that are coming into countries now. I don't understand, if there were no AI, how we could ever deal with the amount of volume of shipments that we're having to process now through customs. I was at the WCO Technology Conference in Maastricht in 2022 when Frank Hyman mentioned that Dutch customs in 2021 had cleared just over 350 million shipments. And in our last webinar that Frank opened up for us, he mentioned that in just that 3-year time span, they went from clearing 350 million shipments to over 1 billion shipments a year. So without this automation, without these best practices, there's just no way that we could manually treat these kinds of volumes. Before I go into the questions, I've been looking through the participants. I just want to acknowledge a few folks. First, the CEO and Commissioner of Customs from Jamaica Customs Agency, Velma Ricketts Walker. Thank you for being here and for allowing Andre to participate in this workshop with us. I also see Gabriela Montenegro. She was one of the speakers in our first webinar. Welcome, Gabriela. I will probably come back to both of you if you have any thoughts and want to share. Don't want to put you on the spot, but give you a few minutes to think about that if you're interested. And lastly, another former colleague from the WCO and a friend of SP and mine, Alexei Sheglov. Welcome, Alexei, to this webinar. And I see we already have our first question from Rayvant Tomby, who is wanting to know how AI startups can take opportunities in this space. And I think, Craig, some of the first questions that I have for you probably will address Rayvant's question. So first thing is, we need to understand, because these words kind of get tossed about, what is artificial intelligence and what really are the different types of AI that we're looking at here and can, put some practical realities around.
Yeah, thank you, Greg, because I think that stepping back a little bit here and addressing the ways that AI can be categorized, I think is quite important, especially for a startup that wants to look at the landscape of AI technologies and figure out, how do I potentially supply a government with these? How do I deal with procurement when we're talking about something that seems a little bit ambiguous to some of us? So this is quite a big question. What are the different types of artificial intelligence? I'll try to give a concise answer. There are different ways you can look at categorizing AI technologies, but I think it's really easy to classify them into 3 distinct categories. So the first category is known as symbolic or classical AI. It's really what AI was spoken about, as long as 70, 80 years ago at this point. And classical or symbolic AI techniques involve knowledge representation and logic programming, such as the programming of natural language rules into computable forms. And ultimately, what separates this category is that symbolic approaches are deterministic in nature. So by that, I mean that in the case of symbolic AI, given a supply of known data inputs, a system will yield specific and expected outputs. So that's really important to understand when we're looking at various use cases of AI in customs and what might be appropriate in certain contexts. So symbolic AI is not taking a guess here. It's actually based upon the data. These are the outputs that are expected. These are the obligations that are required. So if you have a package going from country A to country B and it's identified as such, and you have, let's say, HS codes identifying what the goods are, then we will be able to determine what rules apply to those goods, for example. And then a second category here is really what most people are calling AI today and what a lot of the discussion surrounds. And that's known as statistical AI, stochastic AI, probabilistic AI. These techniques are non-deterministic in nature, and based upon the supply of inputs, use models to infer or learn, such as machine learning methods. So I have to make clear that when people are talking about machine learning, it falls into this category for the most part. And these models help us make an understanding of the state of the world. And it's really, in some ways, an educated guess, if you want to call it that, in a simplified way. And then you can really have this third category, which I think is really interesting and kind of where everything seems to be going right now. which is the hybridization of symbolic and statistical. And many of these new approaches have been given their own unique names. And I think one of the ones that's most interesting to customs is so-called agentic AI or agent-based AI that really looks at making autonomous type of system that may be leveraging the strengths of symbolic approach as well as a statistical approach to solve complex problems and a variety of tasks that involve that. And what's interesting about that is I don't think we're ever going to replace customs agent, for example. But what I do think is that getting back to that conversation about B2C e-commerce and the explosion or the so-called tsunami of packages are flowing these days, I think techniques such as agentic AI help us really create a proxy for customs authorities to help scale their human capacity, but not replacing it, and manage this growth. And this is particularly important for small countries where, you know, there may be a lot of packages, but there might not even be that many people to handle that from an operational perspective. So really in that way, thinking about those three categories of AI and particularly about the hybrid third category, I think it's a really good way to frame AI and discuss AI such that we can then look at what's appropriate in the context of various customs use cases.
Yeah, very helpful in understanding the landscape there. And with that, SP, having that background, what do you see as the entry points, the different entry points for the introduction of these technologies into customs?
Thank you, Craig. Yes. So as Craig mentioned, AI is transforming trade operations in a significant way. And we need to look at entry points based on the tools that are available today for the types of AI that Craig described. And the tools are, you must have heard about the buzzwords, but there are many mature tools that are available today. And they are actually impacting customs in significant ways. So let me begin with risk assessment and fraud detection. That's the most cited use case for AI today. AI algorithms can analyze trade data to identify risk indicators and anomalies, enabling customs officials to prioritize inspection of high-risk cargo. And this actually improves efficiency and reduces delays. The second entry point is, again, on the trade side, automation of the customs declaration or automated compliance. Using natural language processing, AI can automate the extraction of data, which is so essential for creating trade documents and extracting data out of trade documents to ensure that accurate data is available for customs processing. You spoke about the huge numbers, Greg, that the express industry is processing today. Without some of these technologies, it will not be possible. The next, and also often cited use case or entry point, is tariff classification and valuation. Tariff classification was already being discussed before AI became the buzzword through various, classification algorithms. AI systems can use tariff classification, and now it is so commoditized that it's already available for multiple trade systems and custom systems. And people don't hesitate, looking up these, AI-based classifiers. The next, and also something very growing in importance, is cargo inspection and security. So just as you can classify words, text, you can also classify X-ray images. Almost all the X-ray companies today are working on cutting-edge AI technology to automate image analysis and anomaly detection. Image analysis is now as much a practice in many advanced customs administrations as it is with the companies that are producing these X-ray solutions. And sometimes the customs administrations could be ahead of the curve in terms of developing algorithms because they have the data and they have the knowledge. Next, document processing. AI automates data entry and document processing to minimize human errors. Then we have real-time compliance monitoring. When a custom declaration is received or is being prepared, there are these AI algorithms that are running in the trade systems that can actually look up and find out whether there are any, non-compliant transactions entering into the work stream. So it helps act as a real-time audit for the traders as well as for customs officers as they process the declarations. And of course, with the vast amount of information that is available about compliance, there are a few agencies that continuously monitor the issuance globally of non-tariff measures. As non-tariff measures and tariff measures get introduced worldwide, there are those who pull them out and for their professional trade compliance purposes, create databases that help them in trade compliance. But with AI, it's possible to automate all of that to produce business rules that are machine readable. And Craig talked about computational law. One could create those specific rule sets out of plain text that gets generated day in and day out by different countries as they introduce tariff and non-tariff barriers. And then we have chatbots, which are a very old use case of AI. Lots of businesses and governments use chatbots these days. You have to remember that they are driven by some kind of AI. They enhance customs. Last but not least, with vast amounts of process data now available, it's possible to use the process data to optimize business processes. We talk about what if ex ante and ex post analysis of process data at ports, at airports. We can actually run the process data to find out what would be the effect of changes into the process before those changes are introduced. You can use that using simulation algorithms. You can generate these insights using AI. So these are some of the entry points that we have with a diverse range of applications. I stop here.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that, SP. I mean, that does give us a very broad picture of the uses that we see of these advanced technologies that Craig laid out as well. Thank you both for that. And what I'd like to do now, André, is come back to you as one of the practitioners here. This is no longer theory. You have to actually go out and do this for real. So how does the JCA plan to address the current challenges related to an underdeveloped data culture and the integration of these advanced technologies within its operations? So maybe you could speak to what are the specific steps that are being taken to shift from what we know as a paper-centric process to what SP and Craig both have described as a more data-driven approach.
Right. So definitely, we have been taking positive steps. It starts with digitization in regards to our services and ensuring that we don't end up with a digital divide. We foster data-driven culture within the agency, ensuring that all persons, not just internally within the agency as well, because you can have resistance within the trade for adoption and use of technology. So we have been ensuring that we establish our strategic objectives. We have persons onboarded from inception in regards to the objectives. We're very clear with our stakeholders in regards to what it is that we're doing and what we want to achieve. And then we build out these services, and of course, ensuring that we have measurable indicators to look at what the current constraints are and to ensure that we are improving the service overall. In that way, of course, it fosters greater buy-in. Persons feel it encourages a more inclusive environment, and ensure, of course, that not just digitizing a manual service, but ensuring that we remove those redundancies, ensure that we can optimize all our internal and external facing services. That is also supported by policy as well in regards to ensuring that we have strict adherence in terms of the requirements and adoption of course, international best practices standards. The WCO Data Model has been one of guiding components of the single window compendium as well. Definitely what we have seen is a greater buy-in and a faster adoption rate in terms of using the technology, and even within the trade environment as well. And that has reversed the culture where there's always digital, or should we say, a demand for greater or more automation. And so, of course, that's more pressure on us here at Customs in regards to coming up with new solutions. We also ensure that we have continuous sensitization and awareness programs internally, not just for best use of the tools, but also to hear from our officers internal to Customs and also from the stakeholders as to how we can now improve on what we have already developed. There's always room for improvement. And so this constant monitoring and evaluation is what helps to drive change and greater improvement in terms of our service delivery. It's always good as well to do peer reviews. There is a tremendous amount of technology, as mentioned by the fellow panelists, in regards to other activities or other developments and other use cases as well. So peer review is good. We find that that is absolutely instructive. Technology can be costly. There's very little room for error, and you want to ensure that we have what is the best fit for our environment as well. So we found that collaborating with other partners, not just within the train, but also, of course, across other customs authorities, has been of tremendous benefit to us in ensuring that we find the best fit for our environment, because we are, at the end of the day, trying to solve common problems. I think the situations, while they may vary in the degree of difficulty, but they are pretty much the same. As we mentioned it in regards to compliance issues, fraud detection, security issues, and the need for greater efficiency within customs. So these are all common problems. There are multiple solutions, but we want to ensure that we have the best fit for us. Budgets are limited and time is also limited. So we want to ensure that we have, we're making the right decision and of course, fostering greater adoption within our environment. Collaboration as well between customs and the other regulatory authorities is one of the greatest opportunities for increased efficiency. There has always been a thrust for modernization of customs, but again, we partner with other regulatory authorities. And so in bringing them on board for this digital drive, we have seen great success here in Jamaica and certainly from a regional perspective. And of course, we look for international partners, and of course, within private sector, there's a lot of research that is taking place as well. So it's always good to partner with private sector to look at the solutions that they are conceptualizing and looking at possible use cases to see how this can be of benefit to us as well. So all of these are areas that we have been looking into. We have had a number of proof of concepts which have been absolutely instructive and instrumental in our decision-making process moving forward.
Thanks for sharing that, André. It's very important that when we move forward with these advanced technologies, that we do that collaboration in mind. There's always an origin and a destination. Our imports are somebody else's exports and vice versa. And we can't do this in isolation. And I think Atkinson, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, from the Asian Development Bank, he's raised a comment. And Craig, I'm going to come back to you on this. Well, one, because you responded to him. I also think it's a great question, something that I have to deal with. I think, and André would empathize with this as well. They're not always the good guys out there, right? We know that there are bad actors, and unfortunately, there's some pretty smart bad actors. And if they have this kind of technology, it can also help them in their efforts. And Craig, I think some of the stuff that we talked about early on and that we've been talking about over the past months has an impact in this area. So how do you, the work that you're doing, can you just explain a little bit about how you're engaging with these technologies and how we might address both the good guys, let's call that trade facilitation, as well as the interdiction of these bad guys and how we can facilitate the risk assessment, risk management, and the work that you're doing there?
Yeah, thank you. And I really like that question because I don't think it's a question that's brought up very often with regards to what do we do when there's bad actors that are using AI to thwart either more traditional systems and those can even just be literal, human agents. Or what do we do? How do we address that when we're also like trying to implement such technologies? I don't really think there's one answer to that question because I think it does require a suite of different technologies. I do think keeping ahead with the most advanced technologies, like as I mentioned, agentic AI can really improve things like fraud detection. That's going to be an area where I think we're going to see more of that. And it might not just be in areas of customs as we know them. I think this is a broader societal issue and economic issue that we're going to encounter. Before this webinar came online officially, we were discussing some of the issues related to counterfeit goods, et cetera. And they can get pretty good with these things now when they have the ability to scan actual content and replicate it and apply things like labels that are, almost exactly the same as those that would appear on other real goods. In terms of my work, I'm really focused on sort of that basic layer, that symbolic AI type of technology, and in particular in the area of computational law, which looks at expressing natural language rules in precise computable forms so that they can be better understood by humans and automated by machines. I think this has a lot of relevance for the good and the bad. On one side, I think whether it's the customs authorities themselves, whether it's the transportation and logistics operators, or it's the businesses and consumers, I think making it easier to understand which rules apply in certain situations, such as through trade information platforms or through national single windows in terms of when there's a supply of data and documents provided, what rules apply to that, and how can someone understand those actual rules, whether they be an agent or they be someone involved in interfacing with customs. And I think that getting past that first stage when we have digitization and then moving into digitalization through this approach, I think it really helps us to understand what rules apply in what circumstances, what are the obligations, what are the prohibitions. And I just think that makes customs more efficient overall. And I think that helps. And I'll speak to this a little bit more. I don't want to say everything to answer this question, but I really think that helps with the deployment of systems because as we've seen, there is a bit of a lag in terms of the development of certain systems in certain regions. And I think just focusing on that first approach to take the rules and express them in forms that can be better used by humans and better used by machines is really important for setting the stage for more advanced AI techniques to then pick those up and leverage those as well. So that's sort of what I'm working on at the moment. And there's been a few false starts, but I think 2025 might be the year to have some of this push forward and see some of these approaches be implemented at a bigger scale than they have so far.
You mentioned a couple times the human.
Yeah.
We can't forget the humans. Well, let's hope so anyway. That's our desire. And in an earlier webinar, Dominic McGuff had mentioned HI, right? Human intelligence. And yeah, keeping in mind that the topic of this webinar is the future. Where do we go? Strategic roadmaps. We have to include the humans. So with just a few minutes left, I'm going to ask a question, probably both for SP and André. Exploiting AI is about the products, the processes, the people. So the HI, the human intelligence. What HR strategies should customs administrations focus on if they wish to take advantage of these AI techniques? So SP, I'm going to give it to you first. What are your thoughts there? I mean, are we going to go away and it's going to be androids everywhere?
So man in the loop is what they say when they talk about AI and the use of AI. Don't forget the person in the loop as we use AI, because that's going to really be the decisive factor as we apply technology. Of course, that person in loop is the most important part, and on that person we should invest in technical skills and training to enable them to better understand how to use the AI tools, the data tools, enhancing, awareness about cybersecurity and about the use of digital technologies in an ethical way is extremely important, legal and ethical way. Just because you have a bunch of data and just because you know how to use the data and how to use the tools doesn't mean you're free to use AI and do anything and everything. So there are these specialist skills that help process particular use cases through the ethical and legal lens to ensure that the right kind of data is used for the right kind of application to make the right kind of decisions. That's extremely important. The private sector is quite advanced in all of these now. They have the necessary technical and legal infrastructure in their backends to ensure that the vast amounts of data they have is used ethically. I'm saying relatively more advanced, although much work is to be done there as well. But the government side, the customs administrations also need to pick up on these skills and develop these attributes in their human resources. Developing robust IT policies and governance frameworks will ensure that AI initiatives are implemented effectively. And for that, we have to go back to the basics, go back to competence-based HR and competence-based frameworks to develop the skills that are needed for the jobs that tomorrow's government officials and customs officials will be performing at the border. And every possible role that we can think of in the customs, trade facilitation, and the compliance side will have an AI complement. So it's for everyone now, either as a user or as a developer, to have the necessary AI skills. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. André, any final thoughts there? The human intelligence or how this can be applied?
Sure, I agree with the comments of SV. There's a need for capacity building. Of course, we'd have to assess the gaps in the current skill sets, showing, of course, that we develop the level of competence, both for the technology practitioners within customs and also the users of the systems. AI really is embedded in almost anything that we're using now, whether it's WhatsApp, whether it is the Office suite of services, and so much more. We now have the ability to make use of these tools in terms of risk management as well. And this, of course, has to be driven by policy and regulatory frameworks to ensure that we're using these in the proper way. And of course, we also encourage incremental adoption of AI tools. A simple thing as starting with chatbots, which provide supervised responses to customs questions. And then, of course, there are always opportunities for collaboration. We want to ensure that we have an environment that fosters innovation. And that is, of course, allowing us to come up with smarter solutions. We have driving this change as well is providing more services that will meet the needs of our clients. Becoming customer-centric. Many organizations are customer-centric, but we want to ensure that we're providing our end users with the tools that they will need to comply with customs and regulatory requirements as well. We find that information also drives compliance, and that has been our experience, ensuring that persons have the information, knowing what is required of them. And so these are opportunities that we can capitalize on, and ensuring that we have an environment that fosters trust and partnership, charity customs among the border regulatory agencies, and in regards to cross-border trade as well, ensuring that we have opportunities to exchange information. Those are also areas that we need to look into, right? So my final comments.
Thank you, André. Thank you to all of my speakers. I told you the hour would just go by. It's incredible how fast time flies when you're having fun. Before we do wrap it up, though, I have given Velma and Gabriella the ability to speak. Velma, anything you want to add?
Hi, everyone. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be listening and just to listen to the depth of the conversation as we looked at AI. I am particularly intrigued about the part that we spoke about earlier, about human intelligence and how we ensure that, that symbiotic relationship between AI and human intelligence, and to ensure that we, advance AI, but also amplify our own as human beings, our unique contribution to that space. And so, this can only help as it relates to operational efficiencies and, building our ethical standards and ensuring that we are able to meet the future challenges within the global space of trade and border security. And so this is particularly interesting to me. The members, all the panelists spoke, and I in full agreement with everything, and I really appreciate that the thought leadership that is coming out from the panel just now. Everything, for me, is about the customer's experience. As customs, we don't exist for ourselves. We exist to serve and to ensure that we are connecting passengers, we are connecting with trade, and that we are ensuring that there are compliance within the space as we continue to do the work we do. So advanced information, enhanced risk management, the AI helping with that is important. Improve compliance, always important. For us, better decision making in applying AI and the increased efficiency. One of the things I continue to tell the team here at Jamaica Customs is that, we have to embrace the AI. And so also when we're in an era of a data culture, and we had a committee set up just to look at data culture within the agency and to system to allow for us to see ourselves as students of the data and be able to ensure that the AI is helping us as we go on in the work that we do in the decision making. And so as we leverage artificial intelligence in customs administration, especially for the Jamaica Customs Agency, when we're talking about even predictive analysis, is how are we going to be utilizing AI to power that predictive analysis even greater? We're talking about machine learning. How are we ensuring that these machine learning algorithms is utilizing the AI because of the large data set that is having? I know a lot was mentioned about even the natural language processing. But we are on a trajectory here, and it's an awesome journey, and I'm pleased to see where we are, and we'll continue to enjoy the ride and to enjoy learning and to embracing the AI so that we can better serve in the role that we play here. Thank you so much. And thanks, André. Thanks, Greg. Thank you, the other panelists, for this awesome series webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I want to thank all of my speakers again as well as the participants for joining us today for this final webinar in the Customs 4.0 AI and Customs series. It's been an incredible journey. We've had some incredible speakers who've shared a lot of really good information. All the sessions from this series, including today's event, are available for replay after. You can find those on the gctforum.org website, so the gtfforum.org. Additionally, we're excited that we're going to take these transcripts from all four of the webinars, and they're going to be consolidated into a comprehensive white paper summarizing the invaluable interventions that have been made, the key takeaways from this series. This white paper will be published in January of 2025 and will serve as a resource for furthering the dialogue around innovation in global customs. Again, a heartfelt thank you to our speakers who have generously shared their expertise and perspectives, as well as to the hundreds of participants over the 4 different webinars that we've had, and the active engagement and your thoughtful questions and comments. To stay updated on the latest developments in customs and trade, we encourage you to join the Global Customs and Trade Forum and visit our website. These platforms are excellent resources to continue networking and stay informed on cutting-edge technologies, on the developments in these technologies. Looking ahead, we're thrilled to announce that the Customs 4.0 webinar series will return in March of 2025 with a webinar scheduled each quarter. In addition, we will host special sessions on an ad hoc basis focusing on specific and timely topics that are highly relevant to the customs and trade community. Thank you once again for being a part of this journey, and we look forward to seeing you at future events. Together, let's continue to shape the future of global customs and trade. And with that, thank you and Happy New Year, Happy Holidays, Merry Christmas. To whatever holiday you celebrate, I hope that you have the time for some rest and recuperation at the end of the year. And with that, good night.